You know, while progress is being made around girl empowerment, there's been nothing equivalent for boys. So how can we help them develop into well-rounded and healthy men? We welcome back parenting expert Ishai Busi. Hi, Ishai.
Hi, Helen.
So I think this is a really good topic because we do talk about helping girls feel more empowered, but we need to talk to boys too. So one of the things that you talk about is making sure that you have conversations with them as a parent.
Right. It's so easy to miss this with boys. We just don't do it very much because they can be elusive. We get the one-word answers like I'm fine. They're not as talkative. And they tend to internalize a lot more. So it's easy to assume boys are fine. And sometimes they are, but often they're not. And it's really hard to know. And so we miss this opportunities to support boys because we're just leaving them alone so much. We're not having conversations until they act out, until they get in trouble, and then they're getting a lot of attention. And I really think conversations are so important so we can get ahead of that. And so we're not waiting for them to get into trouble or acting out, so we can have ongoing conversations to help them self-reflect and develop and express their internal self, which is a pretty complex world that boys carry inside that they don't really get to share very often.
How do you suggest parents getting them to talk? Because if it's difficult to get them to just talk about anything, is it a conversation where you're just driving and you're sitting in the car and you get a conversation? How do you do it?
Such a good question. The million-dollar question, right? So one thing is acknowledge that it's going to be awkward at first, especially if you're not in a routine and a habit. They're not going to be eager. They're not going to be excited about it. And so just acknowledge that as a parent or a caregiver or adult, there's going to be some discomfort. It's going to feel a little bit unnatural at first. Stick with it and hang in there. You also mentioned some things like doing something at the same time, multitasking while you're talking can help. Being in the car is a classic example. For a reason. But also, playing cards or sometimes playing a sport. During a meal. Sometimes later at night, they're more receptive and open. The other thing is keep it short and frequent.
Okay.
Don't try to hit a home run with some big long talk. Also, we need to listen more with boys. We can over talk. We can give them lessons and lectures. I have great lectures I like to share, but they gloss over and we lose them. And so listening more and really trying to understand, those are some tips that I think will be helpful with conversations with boys.
You also talk too about modeling empathy.
Yeah, teaching and modeling empathy. So most people don't know this. On average, boys are less empathetic, have less empathy than girls do. But that is not an innate inborn trait. That's socialization.
Oh.
The reason is we don't ask as many questions to boys around emotions. Boys don't role play caregiving, for example, as often. We don't talk to them about, hey, how do you think that person might be feeling? What do you think that's like for them? Oh, can you go support that person? That person looks like they're having a hard time. We do more of that kind of stuff with girls. So teaching and modeling empathy with our boys modeling could mean talking about our own experiences and asking them to consider how we were impacted and how we felt. So humanizing ourselves, humanizing others, asking them questions around just real world. There's things happening all the time. Afghan refugees. How do you think the survivors from 9/11 are impacted? What do you think it's been like for them? Asking our sons questions like that. And if they say, I don't know, then don't end there. Don't let them off the hook. Encourage them. Well, think about it. Let me know. I'd like you to consider, how do you think that person was impacted by that choice you made?
Okay. Respecting girls and women.
Yeah. So, sadly, it's 2021, almost 2022, and it's still an insult, considered an insult for a boy to tell someone else they're acting like a girl.
Yeah.
That's still a derogatory expression. So in boy culture, girls, on average, again, there's pockets and exceptions, but on average, girls are still considered inferior. And not only is that not okay for girls, but it's not good for boys because it really sets them up for failure. The vast majority of boys, by the time they graduate from high school, are going to have watched porn. majority of that, what they're watching is misogynistic and derogatory and disrespectful towards girls and women. There's so much of that still in the culture. So we need to model it, how we treat women, how we treat ourselves, talk to them about it, be really clear and specific about what is consent, what is sexual harassment, how would you know? How would you know they're not interested? What would you do if you saw someone else behaving that way? Just being really clear about that.
And don't you think you should teach them that vulnerability is really a strength?
Yeah, and that comes with emotions. That even this conversation we're having, this is not saying boys are weak. We're turning them into being soft and, less manly, that there are so many ways to be a boy. And vulnerability, I'll just clarify that. Vulnerability could mean, it doesn't mean sobbing and crying unnecessarily. It could mean saying I'm sad, I'm feeling afraid or nervous. Vulnerability could mean taking responsibility and apologizing without blaming or being defensive. Vulnerability can mean asking for help. And for so many boys, they internalize this sense that any of those things I just described are weak. Like you shouldn't do it. That's just, you got to man up, right? Like language like that.
Yeah.
So it is tough. You can be tough and strong and talk about feeling sad.
Yishai, all really good points. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Helen.